All right, I have a new guest on the show to talk about some of my favorite topics about how to be fit and healthy from the inside out as we age. Dr. Derek, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Debbie, how you doing? And thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad your team reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, this is kind of what I'm talking about, where I am in my own journey, and really how we hopefully come in midlife to start thinking about are we doing all the right things so we can thrive as we age and be our best version of ourselves the second half of our life is kind of where I am. It's I turned 50 now, I'm 53 suddenly, and then it's just like, all right, what are we doing as you watch your parents age? What can we do to make it even better? So let's kind of just start sharing who you are, what's your mission in life?
Yeah, well, so when it comes to health, fitness, and nutrition, it's interesting because people ask me, did I always know I was going to do this? So my PhD is in exercise science, my master's degree is in nutrition, and I've been doing this for 32 years now. And the answer is no, not at all. I was going to go to dental school. I was going to be a dentist. And when people ask, well, why did you want to be a dentist? It was really two reasons. Reason number one is I did have an uncle who had a dental practice, and he was my favorite uncle, and I was kind of following in his footsteps. And number two is because, well, in undergraduate, I was 244 pounds with a 42-inch waist pant size. Not exactly health and fitness. So luckily, I had to take some prerequisites for dental school, and one of them happened to be this brand new field called exercise science. It's not a brand new field now, but in 1989, it was a brand new field, and a lot of universities didn't even offer it. So I got exposed to it, and I kind of fell in love with it because it spoke to me. I never knew exercise had a science to it. I
Yeah.
figured maybe you jog, maybe you do some calisthenics, something like that. But I didn't know there was anything to it. I didn't know there was anything behind it. I didn't know there was any purpose or mission or reason or any of those things. So it kind of spoke to me. And I really, instead of just learning it as a class, I wanted to learn it as a way of life. And that's how I got into the field initially. And within about a year or so, I went from being 244 pounds and never really doing this at all to being on the stage of a bodybuilding show. So pretty rapid transformation. Long story short, I did not fall in love with bodybuilding. In fact, I disliked the entire experience of it. However, I did realize I could change myself, my body, I could transform, and I could help others do it as well. And that's
Mhm.
what really kicked me into the entire field.
That's funny. I went to college. I always think they're so much younger. Then you start to say the year 1989. That's when I graduated from high school and I went to college. I got into exercise science as well. And then same thing. I didn't know it was a degree and got into corporate fitness and health and nutrition. And it's like exercise science. What is that? So I was there as well. What do you feel is where you are now from where you were back then? What have you feel that you wish you knew back then that you know now?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we're talking 30 something years
I
ago.
know, right?
The information is profound. What I would say this is, yes, there has been dramatic changes, profound changes, especially on the nutritional front.
Hmm.
What I've learned initially with getting a master's degree in nutrition was we were initially taught calorie counting and doing a low
Hmm.
fat or no fat diet. That has changed completely. It's not even close to what it was before. And the fitness side has changed a lot too. But what I would say to answer that question is what I learned with being in this field, with working with a lot of adults, a lot of folks, is the psychological component or the mental component of this whole thing. That's the breakdown. So when I meet a client right now, most of them are very aware of what they should be doing exercise wise, and they're kind of have a pretty good idea of what nutrition should be. However, psychologically, they're not there. They
Yeah.
don't believe they can do it. They don't know they could follow through. They haven't really made a decision for the long run. So my whole analogy in this whole thing is that taking care of yourself is very similar to trying to get good grades in school. So if you think about maybe a student that's not doing so well, a poor student, they may not go to all their classes. They may not do their assignments or homework they're reading. They might not be studying their notes. And then when they go to take an exam, the best they could try to do is maybe cram. Maybe they read everything they could get their hands on, cram for 2 straight days before an exam. Hopefully they could pull off a decent grade, maybe, maybe not. And then they keep repeating that cycle. Now, I see the exact same thing with people with their health and fitness. They say, well, it is the beginning of the new year and I have resolutions, so I'm going to try to eat perfectly and go to the gym every day. Or I do have spring break coming up, or I have this event or that event or whatever it is. And they're doing it in this cramming kind of style where they go as hard as they can and then nothing, hard as they
Yeah.
can and then nothing. And that's not going to lead to good grades or good results. So I would take more of a scholastic approach to this whole thing. And I wish I could teach myself this 30 something years ago is I want to be a good student. I better go to class, all of my classes, and I want to sit in the front, take good notes. I want to ask questions, participate, listen, and learn. I then want to study my notes. I want to do my homework, do my reading. I want to make sure I'm completing my assignments so that when I do take the exam, it's really part of my lifestyle and my grades are going to be very good. Same with fitness, make it consistent, not on again, off again, sometimes, sometimes not. The more consistent you can make it, the better results you're going to get and the easier it's going to be. It's not harder, it is considerably easier. That's what I would say to my old self.
So it's more you're speaking towards achieve sustainability and a long lasting plan as brushing our teeth each day becomes a habit. So creating new habits is important to be get results by being consistent, but also changing how we do things as we age.
Debbie, I like how you gave me the dental analogy right back. That's exactly it. I can't just brush and floss 7 times a day the week before I see a dentist. The
Yeah.
damage has been done. So we understand that when it comes to the teeth. But why do we not understand it when it comes to the rest of our body?
Hmm. I know. But that's what the only thing I don't know. Somehow everyone can brush their teeth, but they don't understand that. All right, why does why doesn't walking 30 minutes throughout the day, you know, how is that not ingrained as how important it is to brush your teeth is just as important to move throughout the day and especially move after you eat. It's something people don't get educated from their doctors, perhaps, the people they listen to the most, maybe.
I think you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. So, looking back at it, and I did do a deep dive into it, the American Dental Association has been pretty consistent over the last 120 years with their message. And their
Mm-hmm.
message was always consistency. You want to brush and floss between your meals, maybe when you wake up and go to bed. The American Medical Association has been anything but consistent. They've been all over the place. And really, their message now is don't do anything for yourself preventatively. Just see your physician, and we could get you another medication for that. And that is not what the Dental Association teaches. So the messaging couldn't be further off between the two groups. And I think that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it is looking at what we did to make things work, creating habits is one thing, but then our exercise program and nutrition, I feel that people try to do the same program they did in their 20s or 30s and try to expect the same results. And I keep trying to share that don't blame the aging process, embrace it. We have to do things differently. So, what have you noticed the most of people in their 20s and 30s? And then we start reaching 40s, going, okay, I'm not getting the results I want. What I need to stop, pause, and course correct and embrace the aging process? What have you learned?
Well, I think it's a few things. First and foremost, if somebody is doing an organized exercise program in their 20s, I give them a lot of credit because they're beating the curve. It's great to
Mm-hmm.
start young. The younger, the better, obviously, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a lot more experience. You're going to get the benefits behind it. Now, if you haven't started when you were younger, if you didn't start in your 20s or 30s, and let's say it's already 50s or 60s or 70s, a lot of people, of course, want to talk about problems with their joints. Maybe it's a shoulder, maybe it's a hip, maybe it's a knee, a back, a neck, some type
Mm-hmm.
of joint-based issue. It's very common. A lot of people that come to see me have those types of issues. It doesn't mean that you can't exercise, but we want to take two different philosophies here. Number one is we want to work around the problem. So with exercise, of course, we're working with muscles and we have 639 muscles. So if there is a joint that's hurt, I think we could find something else to do. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, if you think about the entire field of physical therapy, it's based around working the imbalance of the injured joint. So a lot of people are of the mindset, I'm too injured to exercise, or my doctor said don't do anything because I have a bad knee. That is not the right way to do it. Anybody at any type of high level would work the physical therapy and work the muscle tissue around it at the same time because programs can be put together even if we have limitations. Just like I'm going to go back to school. In school, if you have a learning limitation, you can still learn. You just have to learn in a different way, and the curriculum of the school would change. It's the same thing with exercise. So, people like you that do this for a living, you're a professional in it. You could design programs based around working around it, but also strengthening the imbalance. And that's where I think working with a professional is so important. And a lot of folks should embrace that.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I just was thinking this morning, and I listened to Stacey Sims and other people in there, Huberman, all these big, huge podcasters, people speaking out a lot about how, especially women as we age and men, we should focus on lifting heavy weights and focus on our protein so we avoid muscle loss, sarcopenia. And also, when I talk about slowing of your metabolism as you age and this unexplained weight gain, that we need to look at the why and how strength training is a big part of that. But point is that all you hear, the snippets that you get on social media reels and the clips from Stacey Sims and other people lift heavy weights and doing jump training 3 times a week, 10 minutes a time. And I just want to scream because as you're talking about how important it is basically to create a foundation and have structure, a base, as I say always, how we build a house, as well as the wiring, the electrical system of your house needs to be developed. And that's same with our neuromuscular system of our body and how if we just go from here to way over here, skip all these steps, that's where I think a lot of people get in trouble and get injured. So what have you found in that space of how people are getting recommendations and not meeting with someone as ourselves and just listening to the people out there on social media?
Yeah, take a 65-year-old woman who's never trained before, put her in a CrossFit class, and make her jump up and down off things. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It's going to make injuries very high risk. No, I would not do that. Once again, there are limitations that you have to work around, but I guess I'll go back to the physical therapy analogy. We first have to try to fix what's hurting, what's out of balance, what's broken.
Mhm.
And if you don't address that, you're going to make the problem worse. So we don't want to make the problem worse. We want to address it foundationally, as you just mentioned. If it's
Yeah.
a knee, we want to make sure that we're working the hamstrings and the glutes and the low back. We don't want to overwork the quads. We certainly don't want to be adding impact to the whole thing. Jump training, boy, I wouldn't even do jump training. And I've been working out pretty much consistently since I was 18 years of age, as I was mentioning. I wouldn't do jump training because it's not worth the risk. I don't mind lifting heavy, but you have to say, well, what training experience does this person have? Am I going to lift heavy with somebody with no experience? Absolutely not. I'm going to start working up to it, and hopefully over time and over experience, they're able to do more and more and more. So I'm all about preventing the injury first,
Mhm.
strengthening the imbalance, and then with the training effect, of course, always trying to step up and do more. We want to get from, first grade to second grade to third grade to fourth grade,
Mhm.
just like in school, and training is no different.
Yes, I agree. And I think it is looking at what is out of balance and identifying your areas of opportunity, I like to say it, and figure out what are your limitations, what's holding you back to have everything in balance so we can work optimal level. As I do metabolism testing, I said, and it's really identifying what system of your body is not functioning. Like me personally, I can't lift heavy weights at this time because for my legs, because my pelvis, neuromuscular system, pelvis to my legs is not connecting. So I finally figured out what the wiring system is not working. So I need to work on all these little muscles before I can go lifts. Like, yes, I can work on leg extension, leg curls forever. And I've been doing that 4 years and it didn't get me anywhere. So sometimes you have to know, all right, insanity again is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results and working deeper dive into what's not connecting and what's not firing correctly. And I think that's so important, as you're saying, physical therapy wise, and just even starting an exercise program, or if you are hitting that roadblock and not getting anywhere, as myself, that yes, I know I'm supposed to lift heavy weights and do lead the lifts and squats and jumps and stuff like that. But if you're not working at it, don't try to do it. It's how you get broken.
I think all of us at times we need teachers. We're
Yeah.
in the field, so we're able to see things that a person who is not in the field wouldn't be able to see it. So if I'm sitting back, if I'm a dentist, like I was going to be, I
Yeah.
wouldn't notice. So I think it's super critical, super important. Just like in school, it's very difficult to give yourself an education. In
Mm-hmm.
exercise, a lot of people are afraid to ask or find help, or
Yeah.
they just don't want to pay to get help, or they think they know all the answers. But in any field, working with an expert will save you time and injuries, and it'll give you more benefits. So I think it's so important to contact people like you, people that do this for a living, that build programs that are appropriate for where somebody is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my other, like, kind of more of a pet peeve is people in the gym I observe all the time are on their phones. Scrolling, and they I feel that that whole thing about how we eat, what we eat, when and why, I always say is when you're exercising, same as you're eating, are you in the moment, focused and experiencing that food, tasting the food, chewing your food, eating it slowly? When you're in the gym, are you activating my core and I'm stabilized and I'm good to go, I'm working on my feet and just totally in the zone, checking in with yourself, focus on that, performing that exercise. But I see so many people scrolling in between. Maybe they're listening to music the whole time, but they're distracted every time. I don't know. What do you think of the influence of using phones in between workout sets?
Well, maybe they're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
They're
Not
trying to.
scrolling though. They're not, hopefully
They're
not
not.
scrolling. You can
Yeah,
listen, but when I see people on their Instagram feed or their whatever kids do,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
you're right. So, I'll take even a half step back from that. A lot of people that contact me, and I only work with people that are over the age of 45, don't want to go to an open gym for so many reasons, but that's one of them. Um, they don't think they fit in. They don't think it's for them. They think they're being judged when they walk in. They're embarrassed. They're intimidated. All
Mm-hmm.
of these things are very commonplace, especially for somebody over the age of 45. They just feel as though it's not for them. So when you go to studios, when you go work with smaller gymnasiums, it's more appropriate. It's the right target. So now if I'm over 45 and I have a knee issue and I have a shoulder issue, and if I go to the big box gym, you're right. Everybody is scrolling their phone, they have their earbuds in, and they're taking pictures of themselves for selfies for their Facebook page or their Instagram page, probably TikTok now, but it's not the right place for them. So I do think that if you fall into that category, maybe you shouldn't be at the open gym. Maybe you should be at a studio, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
smaller, somewhere more controlled, somewhere where somebody that's evaluating and taking control of it is managing it appropriately for you and your injuries and where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I owned a fitness studio before I moved down here to San Diego, but luckily closed it before COVID. I owned a fitness studio similar to that theme as a safe place to exercise, and we did small group personal training, 1 to 3 people, and then group classes. But it was all, you know, you can come and not be judged, but also someone's going to watch your form and alignment. And I did that for 10 years, so I know it's great to have that community too. They're still friends. I wanted to jump in to get your opinion on, you're talking about over age 45. And I think that's kind of my area as well into helping people on the podcast. How do you optimize your health and improving that quality of life as we age?
Well, it's all about lifestyle. Once again, I want to brush and floss consistently, so I want to be consistent as I can with a lot of different things. If I broke down the biggest groups, I think it would be in probably no particular order, but number one would be your outlook and your mindset. What are
Mhm.
you thinking about? Are you stressing yourself or are you thinking very positively for yourself? Are you portraying yourself and identifying yourself that you are fit and healthy? Kind of like, are you thinking about yourself as being a good student so that you always perform at a higher level?
Yeah.
Number two would be consistency in your training. And yes, the training should be appropriate for what you're doing. And by the way, appropriate doesn't mean that you just go super light and super easy all the time. It just means that you're challenging yourself around your own limitations. Nutrition. It can't be an on again, off again, binge eat, cram, and then, starvation, intermittent fasting, and keto for the next 42 days. It's got to be something that's considerably more balanced and consistent. And lastly, is I'm fanatical with people in our clinic about sleep And when it comes to sleep, it's not necessarily total hours, it's total hours of deep sleep. So your sleep quality matters so much more than total hours in sleep. If the
Yes.
sleep quality is high, you're going to release more growth hormone, you're going to rebuild and repair, you're going to prevent injuries, and it also repairs your brain, not just taking out the beta amyloid plaque, which is where dementia and Alzheimer's can start growing from, but also it helps your decision making. So then you're able to eat better and train better and work harder, and everything else in your life will improve as long as your quality of sleep is. So those would be the four quadrants I preach for people over the age of 45 to really work on. And the more consistent you can make that, the better it's going to be.
I just writing that down, the brain health. I'm finding myself going down all these rabbit holes, kind of pivoting to not just improving how we age from the inside out, but the full brain health, because talking so much about our future self and watching my mom who's 83, and I just talked to someone else today. Everyone's losing the dads go first. The men, we need to, but women are getting the attention right now, but everyone I know, parents wise, the most time, 90% of the time, the husband, the dad passes first. So really looking at what we can do to improve that, but cognitive health part of that. So many of the stories I hear as we age are the Parkinson's, the Alzheimer's, dementia, and really working on, I think, the exercise and nutrition. But as you mentioned, how important sleep is, we keep diving into, and the gut health and leaky gut and leaky brain, but just how important it comes back to that. The sleep and the stress always come back into the quality of life aging
Yeah,
process.
I agree. And when we look at the correlation between diabetes and dementia, they're almost moving parallel with each other. They're moving in the same direction. And there's a couple of
Mm-hmm.
reasons behind that. First and foremost, with diabetes or the abundance of sugar inside your body, which then produces an insulin deficiency, a lot of damage happens to vessel walls. So the
Mm-hmm.
sugar starts breaking down and destroying the vessel walls. So the body tries to repair by producing more calcium to reinforce the vessels so that they don't collapse and lead to organ problems. Now, for a long time, even the medical community thought there was this blood-brain barrier so that it wouldn't affect the brain as it was affecting your heart and your liver and your kidneys and all your other organs. What we found, though, is that's not the case at all. So as soon as you start destroying the organs with which you would think of with classical diabetes, it's doing the same thing to the brain. So that's where the beta amyloid plaque starts building up. Number two, it's a strong correlation between diabetes and dementia because when you have more sugar in your body and you do have more circulating insulin in your body, you're not going to sleep well. Your deep sleep is going to be shot. So I always will say to my clients, do you want the recipe for a terrible night's sleep? And of course, nobody wants it, but they say, what's a terrible night's sleep? A terrible night's sleep is simple. Have any alcohol in any grain like pizza or pasta. So beer and pizza or pasta and wine. Oh, I'm not saying that you won't fall asleep. You're going to pass out on your favorite chair in the family room. That's going to happen. But when you go to sleep, you're going to toss and turn all night long. You're going to be hot. You're going to be cold. You're going to have temperature regulation problems. You're going to go up to use the bathroom several times a night. You're going to wake up in the morning as a hot, sweaty mess, not sleeping at all in deep sleep, and you're going to be a zombie the entire next day. Now, that's only one night. Debbie, think about that over decades. Think about that over a lifetime. So
Mm-hmm.
your body and your brain never gets a chance to get all of that gunk out of there, which happens in deep sleep. So that's what's really affecting it between the sugar and the insulin and the sleep. It all plays hand in hand. And that's the story of diabetes and dementia.
Yeah, we're doing Dr. William Davis is coming back on my podcast in 2 weeks with Martha Carlin and Amber from Beam Minerals to talk about the connection of mineral balancing, gut health, and brain health, and the glycolics layer of the lining of the vessel wall. And it's so fascinating to me as we dive into so much on what can we do now today to prevent what we keep hearing about of our parents and their friends, how their people are passing away, that it's like, all right, I'm seeing these patterns. It feels really controllable, that it doesn't have to happen if we can do all this information we're talking about now and be health optimizers.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And then when you talk about what other things you can do, a lot of people don't know this, but maybe you've heard of this before. So MCT oil is pretty popular. People take
Hmm.
it because they want to be in ketosis, they want to burn body fat, and it does work for body fat burning because it does help transport the sugar out of your liver. So that whole thing is true. But did you know, though, with MCT oil, it all started, though, in the 1960s as being anti-dementia.
Yep. That's how I
Not a
learned
lot,
about it.
yeah, not a lot of people know about it as anti-dementia. So it's interesting. So it went on for about 40 years as being one of the best things to prevent dementia. And it never became popularized. But as soon as Dave Osprey said, oh, yeah, it also helps transport the sugar out of the liver and you could burn a lot of fat. And that's why I wrote this book called Bulletproof. Oh my goodness, it became extremely popular. So I would recommend, once again, I'm a manufacturer of supplements. I would recommend for anti-dementia of taking an organic MCT oil. So that is
Mhm.
something good to take. I would recommend that. Now, it doesn't work in a vacuum. You can't say, well, I'm going to take this high octane MCT oil, but I'm never going to change my diet. It won't work like magic. You
Mhm.
still need to work on your lifestyle as well to
Mhm.
improve it so that you get the best benefits out of it. And if you do the two, you could burn fat and prevent dementia. And that's what I would say about the high octane MCT oil.
Yeah. I know my mother-in-law passed away years ago, Parkinson's, but that's right after 2007 we got married. So 2005, 2000 in that range window time range we were introduced to coconut oil to help, which was really the MCT oil part of it, but taking that before bed to help with the Parkinson's cognitive health
I'm a
long
big fan. In
ago.
fact, it even improves cognitive function. So if you said, well, I'm not worried about dementia, I'm not worried about fat loss. And by the way, I don't know too many people that say they're not worried about either one of those.
Yeah, I
But
was
even
gonna
if you
say.
did, uh, it does speed up the processing of the brain and it reduces morning fog. So you could think faster, think clearer, which is super critical and super important. And also, if you've tried it before, and it sounds like you have, you can put it in your coffee, you can put it in your tea, you can put it in your protein drink, just about a tablespoon a day, virtually no taste. So it doesn't change the taste of these things. It doesn't taste like coconut oil. If you do put it on a spoon, and the one, once again, the one we have is an organic one from Indonesia, it's high octane MCT oil. If you drink it, like a lot of people drink olive oil, you might be able to detect a little hint of coconut, but
Mm,
it's faint. It's a very
mm.
soft tone to it. So try that out. I do highly recommend it for all of those reasons.
Yeah, I have not had some for a while, so I should probably get some and start using it again as I'm getting more paranoid about brain health for myself. But I used to always, when I Dave asked me, his coffee came out. I drank too much of the bulletproof coffee. That's how all I ate till one meal later. And yeah, that was my story of adrenal exhaustion, whatever you want to call it. But I was drinking bulletproof coffee by the gallon and then not eating anything else and training for Ironmans and fitness classes I teach all day. And that was not a good outcome.
And Debbie, you touch on a very good point. And by the way, if you need some high octane oil, go to strengthgenesis.com. We have some beautiful organic MCT oil. But
Great.
if you take too much when you first start, you will not be walking, you will be running to the
Disaster
bathroom.
pants.
Yeah. So start with a tablespoon. Some people say, well, what if I take a tablespoon several times a day? I would say you must work up to it. It can be a pretty powerful anti-constipation medicine, which some people take it for that reason too.
Hmm.
But don't take too much too soon. And with Dave Osprey, you're mixing that with ghee, and
Hmm.
it's extremely heavy in the digestive tract. And I like what you said, disaster pants.
Yeah, that's what we used to call it years ago. Brock Armstrong and I, we used to podcast. We're like, if you want, watch out for disaster pants having too much MCT oil. That's you will be running to the bathroom.
I'm going to use
So,
that. I'm going to use that line.
so talk about how you've helped people reduce medications in their immune systems,
Yeah, I
helping them.
think, yeah, absolutely. And reducing medications oftentimes is a metabolic function of changing their diet and their nutrition. So I mentioned diabetes and I mentioned dementia, but if you want to look at heart disease, if you want to look at thyroid dysfunction, if you want to look at a lot of diseases, even cancer, most forms of cancer, once again, it's because of the circulating sugar insulin paradox that we have going on right now. We're at a stage where many Americans are consuming the majority of their calories from high glycemic sugars and carbohydrates. They're
Mhm.
having breads, they're having grains, they're having things out of wrappers and boxes and all of these crazy things. Yes, it's quick. Yes, it's convenient. Yes, it's everywhere. And you could even say, yes, it's delicious, but it's not nutritious. So, first and foremost, if you didn't necessarily know or understand anything about nutrition, if you were to go back to the way your grandparents or great grandparents ate, they were pretty close to what you should be doing. So, and on my side of the family, since there was this huge Italian influence, because they were both sides of the family were from Italy, I could still picture my grandparents. They processed their own chickens. So the chicken, so Sicilian, their chickens were hanging in the garage, and they processed their own. My grandfather processed their own chickens, and off to the side was the vegetable garden where they grew all of their own vegetables. And that was the majority of most meals. The pasta in my grandparents' and great grandparents' age was the side dish. It started changing, though, in my parents' generation, where it became the main dish. So if we were to go back in time, that's kind of what it should look like. And that wasn't that long ago. If you want to go way back to when humans evolved, we only had two choices. You could fish or hunt. So you were eating proteins and fats.
Mhm.
Agriculture didn't come until a lot later. So for the first 2.7 million years, you were fishing and hunting. Only over the last 10,000 years were you growing crops and grains. So you could look at those two different models. By following them, though, it could reduce diabetes, heart disease, stroke, dementia, and many forms of cancer because those genes express themselves under glycation or under that sugar load. So that's where I would start with, and you could reduce all medications.
Mhm. Yes, I do believe in the nutrient dense whole foods, and we learn that as nutritional therapy practitioners, the history of what you just spoke about, Weston A. Price Foundation and Weston A. Price, and just the dentist part ties in there, but how it's just amazing when you look at the timeline of the food industry and our health correlating all together. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And most of the damage has been done in the last 80 to 85 years. So it's been pretty recent in terms
Hmm.
of human evolution and much more so in the United States than any other place. Um, there's many reasons. Once again, being in the schools for nutrition, they taught us a high carbohydrate diet. It was a low fat, no fat. Fat was bad in any way, shape, or form for a long time. And a lot of people that are over the age of 45 still remember that. So that's still ingrained in there. Number two, of course, is the fact that carbs and sugars are a drug. The World Health Organization sees it and categorizes it as a drug, so it's addictive. So the more you have, the more you want. So if I'm always having carbs and grains, I'm going to want more. It doesn't work that way for chicken and asparagus. It just doesn't. I
Yeah.
might like chicken. In fact, I really enjoy chicken, but I'm not addicted to it. Whereas people do get addicted to the carbs.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's going to require even more so. So there's a lot of conflicting and repeating reasons, even before we talk about the influence of major medical, pharmaceutical companies, major health, or I'm sorry, major food companies, government. There's a lot of conflicting reasons why our nutrition as a society has really gone way downhill.
I just saw this article on LinkedIn, one of the groups I'm in on Cheerios had a new Oreo Cheerio cereal. I was shocked and I totally remembered a flashback of college health class. I had to do some project. I remember it was on Cheerios cereal, and this is back, what, 1990, 91, when I did a study on grocery store mismarketing, labeling low cholesterol on Cheerios cereal that never had cholesterol. Now we know cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease, but it was so funny that, okay, that was 30 years ago, and we're still seeing the same marketing labels on cereal, General Mills, Kellogg's, and Cheerios. Now it's Oreo cookies in Cheerios. So, yeah, we haven't really made that much progress, I feel.
No, we haven't. And by the way, I live in Buffalo, New York, city of good neighbors, but we make Cheerios in Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
Yeah, in fact, at least once a week I drive by the Cheerio factory. So I know exactly where it's made. No, it's not good for you. It's awful for you. And if you think about breakfast cereal, what
Mhm.
a wonderful innovation in marketing. So
Yeah.
we basically take grains or cellulose or wood pulp, we coat it with sugar, additives, and preservatives. We put it in a box. Now the box costs more than the ingredients. So, and the box is only 25 cents, but it's cost more than the ingredients. And then we sell it for $10 and people get addicted to it, right? But if you put all those words on there, low cholesterol, low sodium, American Heart Association approved, all on the box, people are fooling themselves into thinking they're helping themselves, and they're not. They're shortening their lifespan. They're making their body image worse. They're making their health worse. Their energy's going downhill. All of those things are happening, and a lot of it is just influenced by marketing.
It is so sad. So I'm going to Italy. I've been there a few times, but I am going in a couple months. And knowing, I just saw someone else, Dr. Vincent Pedre was there, it's saying, eating croissant or the bread in Europe. What you see often are people in American food versus when you travel to Europe and people might have some bread and they're having wine. People tend to drink more wine there and eat later. What do you see of the cultural experience and the relationship with food and what they're eating and health compared to the US?
Well, a few things. I think first and foremost, what Americans do when they go to these places on vacation is a little bit different than how the natives live there. That is a thing. I think number two, though, is we're talking about Italy, France, Spain, a lot of the Mediterranean area. They don't consume the amount of carbs we do, even though we attribute things like pasta, croissants, and wine. They're still taking in a lot less than us, but what they're taking in a lot more of is dietary fat. They're still using butter, they're still using cream. Everything is in oil. And because of it, their life expectancy is longer. Now, also, a lot of people aren't aware of this, but in the European community, you cannot use corn. So corn fructose corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, cornmeal, cornstarch, corn flakes, corn on the cob, popcorn, corn anything is only for agricultural purposes in the European community. You cannot put it in the food. You can't put it even in preserved and canned food. In the United States, we put it in everything.
Yeah.
It's in everything.
Yeah.
In fact, for a long time, once again, people would think, oh, geez, air pop popcorn, that's like a diet food. Weight Watchers taught that forever, right? There's no points to air pop popcorn. No, it's still corn. It'll still increase your blood sugar level 100 to 150 points. It's garbage. You're better off having the butter and the salt and avoiding the corn. So I think that's a big part too in the European community. They're not using that, and they're having a lot of
Hmm.
fewer carbs than we are. And lastly, they're not taking SUVs and driving to Sam's Club and putting 21 bags of groceries in there. They're purchasing things that are fresh from their butcher, from their gardens, and they're
Hmm.
only able to carry as much as they're able to eat for the next couple days. So a completely different way of life than what we do here in the United States.
Well, yeah, so you go to the grocery store to get the food for the next day's meal and you're walking everywhere and you look at, the different towns and if you watch movies that are filmed there, so you can see they're walking up hills and stairs and they're older people. They're not sitting in front of the TV at home all day. They're out in community and I think that's part of the blue zones, but I think it's more that they're moving throughout the day and getting outside and with people having a community and especially when they eat too. So it's slower. I always laugh at that too. When we go to Europe and you eat lunch, it's almost like, can we get the bill? The let you sit there and eat for 3 hours
Yeah,
and you have to say, okay, we want to go do stuff, but you feel like guilty when you have to ask them, we want to leave because they
Debbie, it's
do
a
take
different
their
lifestyle.
time.
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle. Everything is done slower.
Uh-huh.
It's deliberate. It's purposeful. It's all designed.
Hmm.
If you really want to put it in a nutshell, it's really all designed around the quality of the food, quality of the experience.
Hmm. Yeah. So what goes wrong in the US? And this could be a whole topic, but what do you think we can do to be better here and take ownership of our future self today?
Yeah, so ownership is a big word that I think is important. We all have to take care of ourselves. As much as we think we have been influenced in the wrong way by big food, by big pharma, by big government,
Yeah,
you can't just play victim though. You
it's a
can't.
choice.
you still have to make a choice. Nobody is
Mm-hmm.
forcing food down your throat. You're still picking and choosing, even if you've been led in a bad direction. So first and foremost, you got to learn what you should be eating and what you should be doing. If you wanted the simplest way, as I mentioned, go back to your grandparents or great grandparents analogy. After that, though, take ownership of it, eat the right foods, keep yourself consistent, watch how you're doing it, and believe in yourself that you can. And if you do, you'll be moving in the right direction. Now, on the big front, though, if you said, is there anything else the government can do? And I don't want to get into the government this or government that, but it does seem that there is more scrutiny, especially over the last couple months, of foods than we've ever seen in our lifetime. So I think finally, um, the veil is being pulled back on what big food, big pharma has led us down this path. So a lot of things are being revealing. I think it's a very exciting time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I know some states have already banned some of the dye, the red dye, or whichever ingredients that it's just so mind-boggling that the rest of the world doesn't allow certain foods, but they make it especially toxic for the US. But they would never make the same product for Europe. It's just makes no sense that US just gets the crap.
It makes you wonder why, right?
Yeah.
So, why do we spend more in healthcare than every country in the world combined, but yet we have one of the lower life expectancies of any industrialized country? So it really makes you wonder, is it an utter failure and we just don't know any better? Or is it
Mhm.
a tremendous success in terms of an economic policy? So there's a lot that goes into this whole thing, and I don't think there's any one answer. I think there's more than one answer, but you can't help but look at that.
That someone might be people more concerned about getting more money than taking having quality of life. What's more important is get more of the money, more than follow the money, people say.
Yeah, no,
So
agreed. I think it's economic.
yeah, so really we should to follow up, summarize, you're saying take ownership of your health. We're in charge. Make the choices that are best for you and thinking of your health today, is how you're going to show up when you're 70, 80, 90 years old. So doing as you're saying, you're working with 45 and older people. We should, what should we focus on? Top three things.
I think also too, as we age, protein needs to be a priority.
Yeah,
So folks, as they
thank you.
do age, we don't
Hmm.
absorb protein the way we did when we were younger. So each gram of protein that you do consume is not being absorbed the same way as it was when you were 15, 20, 25 years old. So you do have to make sure you're taking in enough protein, even maybe more so than the recommended daily allowance. So when people look at the RDA or the recommended daily allowance and say it's only zero point 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, that's the lowest level.
Yeah.
That's the level that you cannot go below. That doesn't mean what you should be doing. It's kind of like saying you need this much oxygen to live. Okay, I better just take in that much. You would never do that. So the protein should be higher. I would recommend eating protein as your priority with every meal,
Hmm.
your breakfast,
Hmm.
your lunch, your dinner, in any order. And by the way, your digestive tract doesn't know what time it is. If you want eggs for dinner and chicken for breakfast, go ahead and do it.
I
Uh,
started calling it meal one, meal two,
yes,
and then
yes,
meal three. Instead of
totally.
like breakfast, why do we have to label it? Just call it a meal.
It's called marketing, right? We need to
Yeah.
think what breakfast foods are, what lunch foods are, what dinner
Mhm.
foods are. We've been marketed to too much in the United States. So that's where I'd start with. And number two is I'm going to go back to the insulin and the high glycemic things. We're a country of crackers and bread and wraps and pizza and pasta and croissants and ice cream and all these things. That has to decrease. You must decrease that if you're hoping to prevent diabetes, heart disease, dementia, expressing cancer, all of those things that we just talked about, that must decrease as protein goes up. And then lastly, yes, do work in your strength training. If you don't know where to start, I would clearly get help and see somebody professionally. No, I would not start in a CrossFit class, start jumping up and down off of high boxes and things like that. Do something appropriate for your limitations and do it consistently.
Hmm. Yes, I totally agree. Great suggestions. I do feel the importance of protein in the strength training for sure. And I know myself, I have to eat protein to feel full and satiated. I used to focus so much in the past as a higher fat diet, but I don't feel full and satiated. Even yesterday, I didn't have any protein. I was traveling and I needed I didn't find any. I need to pack it the bit long quality jerky because the beef jerky, the airport's crap, sugar,
Yeah,
all junk
yeah,
on it.
yeah.
But I ate too many macadamia nuts because I was coming from Hawaii, but it wasn't filling. So I know for me, if I need a lot of protein and probably twice as much as I used to because of the whole aging process, but I know that's when I feel satiated. So as you said, you can't overeat chicken or steak. That is for me too. I'm not gonna, I can eat a whole bag of crackers.
Yep.
I'll eat the whole basket of bread if I would let myself eat that. But yeah, I need protein. So if you're struggling with figure out your macros, just I always think start with the meat first and eat it slowly, chew your food, be mindfully eating, and you should feel a lot better that way if you have good digestion.
Yeah, Debbie, I'll stop you right there too, because I agree. I have in 32 years never seen a client gain body fat because they just ate 19 breasts of chicken every day.
Yeah,
Never have I
you
seen
can't
that,
do
or
that.
fish, or beef, or eggs. I have never seen anyone worsen their health because of it. But going
Yes.
back to what you just said, first and foremost, Hawaii sounds fantastic.
I was
And
2 days, so it was not that great, but it was great.
oh, okay, it was 2 days. You mentioned macadamia nuts. I'm a huge fan of macadamia nut oil. In fact,
Hmm.
it's our number one product at strengthgenesis.com. Have you ever cooked in macadamia nut oil?
No, but I know that's a good oil for the look at the heat level of heat temperature cooking
High
oil.
heat, it doesn't oxidize. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's the key with macadamia nut oil. It is the highest level of heat without oxidation of any cooking oil in the world, and that includes avocado oil and coconut oil too.
Mm.
So we have cold pressed macadamia nut oil, and for some people that don't know what cold pressed is, it just means it's processed at cold temperature, so it doesn't ruin the potency of the omega-3 and 9 fatty acids. But
Mhm.
when you cook in this Australian, we call it liquid gold Australian macadamia nut oil, it makes everything taste buttery and nutty. So if you cook
Ooh.
your vegetables in it, if you cook your eggs in it, if you cook your protein or your meat in it, delicious. Tastes like
Ooh.
butter, but even healthier for you. And that, once again, is our flagship product at Strength Genesis.
I'll have to check it out. Well, amazing. Where should we send people to learn more?
So
You
you can
said
learn
that
more.
website.
Yeah, no, I just mentioned it,
Yep,
strengthgenesis.com.
that's it.
So there we do have all of our Facebook handles, Instagram handles, all social media is on there. The whole premise behind Strength Genesis is highest quality ingredients that we could possibly find. Australian macadamia nut oil. I mentioned before the organic MCT oil. We have this keto extra virgin olive oil salad dressing that has been ridiculously popular. We have not been able to keep it in stock, and it's the only salad dressing right now. After you open it, you do not need to refrigerate. There's no
Wow.
preservatives, no soybean oil, no canola oil. And
Hmm.
then lastly, everything that we produce at strengthgenesis.com, I put it in sustainable packaging. So if you walk into a health food store and you see all of the obnoxious big plastic tubs of protein and capsules and
Yeah.
vitamins and all of that, the plastic is awful for the human body. It's a petroleum byproduct. Microplasticity is a thing. It'll increase your estrogen levels, make it harder to lose body fat. We talked about dementia, it'll increase your risk of dementia. We put everything in glass, in paper, or in metal. So our protein
Mm.
containers come in metal. They come in aluminum, which is really cool. And all of our oils come in glass because it's better for your body and better for the planet. All of that at strengthgenesis.com.
Amazing. Well, I'll have to check it out. I obviously we all cook hopefully at home and seed cooking meat. We need the good oils. We've been doing tallow, but macadamia nut oil sounds pretty good in there. Mix it up. Good flavor. And then olive oil, if I do vegetables, I just love to pour olive oil and good sea salt on top. So that
Right.
is a good one to try. Amazing. Well, thanks for your knowledge today. And I love just talking to other people that are passionate about improving people's quality of life and quality sleep, quality of life, and living a long, happy life is essential, not just living.
No, Debbie, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on today. I had a lot of fun and I love the conversation.
Great. Thanks so much.